Hello, everybody. Let us all welcome Professor Ramesh Loganathan. He needs little in the way of introduction, but it would be my honor to present a short synopsis of the feathers in his hand. He's an accomplished technologist with over 20 years of engineering and R&D leadership experience. He is a regular speaker at tech workshops and seminars in India, especially in the startup circles. Since December 2015, he has moved full-time into academics and as a professor of co-innovation, heading the Research Innovation Outreach Program of IIIT Hyderabad. He helped start and grow the Technology Transfer Office, Co-Innovation Labs, and Entrepreneur on Residence Program, and the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. He has been the adjunct faculty of IIIT Hyderabad since 2002. He is also the visiting faculty of IIT Hyderabad and member of governing board of incubators in IIIT Hyderabad, IIT, and BITS. So until recently, he was the center head and vice president of products of Progress Software's Hyderabad Labs, responsible for leading the product development at the Hyderabad Development Center. He was also instrumental in making an engineering team which is known for being innovative and is recognized at the national level. So let us all welcome Professor Logarath. Professor Ramesh, please, the dais is yours. Kindly go ahead.
Thank you so much, Avik. My pleasure here today. Let me just get my presentation going.
Sure.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
I'm having some network issues today. So good afternoon. So very happy to be here at this talk by IIT Roper, and so I'll be just sharing some thoughts on how does one evaluate ideas and what are required in the early stages of a startup. It's just a teaser talk. There is not. When I wish it was as simple as that. Some yarn can be given and we can create successful startups. Startup journey is very hard, and all the hard work, all the heavy lifting is done by the entrepreneurs. But these are just some pointers, since you're all likely to be either thinking of starting up or early stage startups. Some pointers on what to look for when you're looking at the ideas in the early stages. So the whole country, is rapidly rising in the innovation ecosystem. Hyderabad is rising as well. I'm from Hyderabad, and so Hyderabad has a very active early stage ecosystem. Not so much the later stage. There are not as many unicorns from Hyderabad as there are, say, in Bangalore or NCR or Mumbai and such. But it's a very vibrant early stage startup ecosystem. But even as unicorns are rising, right? I mean, India is one of the newest emerging home for unicorn startups. So very large successful startups are coming up in the country, while still US and other places continue to be much larger in number. But India's like from being almost non-existent 5 years back to like every year there are like anywhere from 5 to 10, 15 this year. There may be more unicorns coming up from the city. Startup unicorns are basically startups that have become very successful, have gone to $1 billion in valuation. Those are generally referred to as unicorns. Now, but the number is still very small, right? Why are the numbers small? That's a big concern. While we have if you look at the number of startups, we probably have amongst the second or third largest number of startups in any country, right? The largest number of startups, and yet, as one measure of very successful startup ecosystem, the unicorns is one measure. The number of unicorns is still very small in India compared to other countries. Very small. Now, why is it so? I think that is the big question to ask. And I think the lot of the considerations for a successful startup or the foundation for a successful startup are laid in the very early stages, right when the startup journey starts. Right there, some of the foundations get laid. And let's look at those. What is it that kind of creates a good product? If you have a good product, then you're likely to, of course, there's whole execution risk always there, right? You need to get a good team, you need to get a right team, you need to execute very well. But if you have a good product, right, then the probability of becoming very successful is very, very high. If you don't have a good product, doesn't matter how good a team you build, when the product itself is not that great, then you're not going to succeed, right? So good product is a necessary starting point, and good product is where the startup journey starts. In the early stages, a startup journey starts with a product, right? With an idea, which is idea for a product, and product is not just a solution that is built. A solution is a solution. A project is a project. A technology is a technology. Technology doesn't become a product, or solution doesn't become a product, right? Or a project doesn't become a product. A product is much more than that, right? So we look at what makes a good product, right? Well, technology and solution is important, but technology and solution don't make product. Just because I build something, it doesn't become a product. Yes, I aspire it to be a product, but it doesn't become a good product. Now, so what makes a good product? Where does one start, right? If you're a researcher or you're an aspiring entrepreneur, early stage entrepreneur, where does one start, right? What are some of the key considerations in building a great product, right? So that's what we will look at in the next half hour or so. Now, look at they're very, very successful products, right? Now, how did these products become great? Now, if you look at, see, I mean, if you just take something as simple as a fidget spinner. Now, why did fidget spinner become so popular? And it is like, it's surprising how popular it has become. Now it has become a little less so. But I remember like 6-7 years back, they were banned in schools in the US because it's becoming so addictive. Kids were like completely, what do you call it, engrossed in it. And like they're not paying attention to anything happening in the school and class. So many school districts in the US banned fidget spinner. It became such a viral product. But so much so like nobody even knows who created it. It's become like a commodity product. There are any number of brands in the market right now. Now, but the product became so successful because it made it's not a, there is no utility value, right? But there was an aspirational value. People liked holding it. People liked the way it's spun, right? Very smoothly spinning, the way it feels in your hand, things you can do with it, right? It was just a phenomenally successful product. If you take iPhone, right? When iPhone started, there were phones in the market already. They're very, very large players, right? When iPhone came into the market, they were not even in the phone market. They were not even in any related markets. So at that point, Apple was making PCs and laptops and like other things. They were not in the phone market at all. First, they came with the iPod, which was an extremely successful product. There are tons of MP3 players, music players, and very, very stylish, small, size, big, thin, slim, all shapes and sizes. And yet, they came with just a jog wheel, a very sleek, very unconventional design, right? The design that they had, and very sleek. And the whole packaging, they're one of the first products to come where like the product came in a small, even the box was very stylish. Right? When iPod came, even the box was very stylish. It had its own headphones and like all very neat. And then the quality of the product, not just visual. From the time you box it, right? Unboxing a product, like the experience of unboxing an Apple product is very, very high. They keep it very high. From the time you get the box, right, to seeing the box, opening the box, what do you see in the box? You see the product, you take the product, you feel the product, you power it on. What do you see first? Those are all first impressions, right? Yes, that is not the product. A box is not even the product, right? It's only a packaging for the product. Even the phone, when I turn it on, that is not the product. The actual product is when I start using the phone. But right from the packaging all the way till the features and the performance of the product was a focus for them, right? Now, they made sure like it worked so well. It looks so different. It looks so aesthetic. Right, and it served a need. Like they said, when iPhone came, like the iPod with the MP3 player that they had a very, very simple jog wheel. The whole idea of simplicity. How do you navigate through music? So they had a simple jog wheel. The jog wheels had different click positions. It was intuitive, very easy to learn, and you're playing music, right? So you can just jog. You can do slowly, you can forward, you can do very fast, it goes very fast. It had a very intuitive interface, and the jog wheel was the kind of innovation in the iPod product. When they came with iPhone, they said, look, all the phones had number pads at that point, right? They said, like, and then even the smartphones had multiple buttons. Some had 3, some had 5, some had buttons on the side, in the front, right? Lots of buttons. They said our phone should have only one button. Volume controls, power on and off, and just one button. Now, you control and imagine the innovation you need in the software interface, those of you that understand software. that you only have one button to play with. Now, which means it should be very, very intuitive. And that's where the innovation came. They started out from the visual design of the product to the performance to the interface, and like they just got the market like crazy in a market where they had zero presence. Within few short years, they became one of the market leaders in the smartphone space just because of a fantastic product. Right now, what makes a product fantastic? Right, if you look at it, like it should start like when you're starting from a startup. Yes, it's good to have think of a product that will be a huge success in the market, right? But while you hope for it and you aspire for the success, but you have to start somewhere, right? Now, where do you start? Now, that is the idea of a startup, right? If you take Uber, what do you think of Uber's idea? Uber's idea was not that we will get an alternate taxi service. Uber's idea was not that like we will get taxis that are easily available. Uber's idea was not that we will get taxis from a map, from an app which has a map and you can track. Every one of it was already done before. There were aggregation apps which said like when you want a taxi, in US getting taxi was never easy. It takes a lot of time. Like the drivers are rude, the service is not great, right? And like they may cancel the ride. You wait for 45 minutes, and at the end of it, they say they cancel the ride. Now, so it was not easy getting taxis in the US. Now there were aggregation apps that said like, okay, we will aggregate multiple taxi providers, and then we will make sure you get a taxi sooner than what others can get you. It didn't work, right? People said we will show it to you on a map. We will tell you where the car is before it comes. Map was not new. People tried that, didn't work either, right? People tried all kinds of solutions. All kinds of solutions to solve this problem. So the problem is not the idea, right? Not easy to get taxi rides, expensive taxis, right? Or it takes long time to get the taxi. Service is poor. Those are all problems. You can't say like I'm going to solve the problem. The biggest thing is like how are you going to solve the problem? Recognizing the problem and how are you going to solve that together? That combination is what makes the idea. Uber came and said we will solve the problem by aggregating unused time from personal cars. Like students in the US, for instance, where Uber started, all students have, unless you're in a very, very big city like New York or such, in most places, you need to have your own cars. You cannot manage without. Yeah, you have to have your own cars. Now, all students need money. They say students have cars and students need money. At that point, if they don't get a university job, they're probably kind of working in a pizza store or somewhere else, right? That's the kind of job, very, very low paying jobs. Now, suddenly they said like, can we go and offer them a better pay and still work within their time constraints because they're student. So they will have classes, they'll have other work, assignments, homeworks, whatever, right? And so which means like somebody may come for 2 hours, somebody may come for 4 hours, somebody may come for 6 hours, somebody may come in the morning, somebody may come in the evening, right? It is now, can we create a system that accommodates their constraints and still gets a large number of cars into my pool so that when somebody needs a ride, I can make a car available. So that was the whole model. That was an idea. They said like all the others went after taxes. They didn't go after taxes. They did say taxes is already the quality of service is very poor. You cannot improve the quality of service, right? On a base that's already very, very poor. They said we will flip it. We will provide taxi service from non-taxes, from students' cars, from personal cars. Anybody that's willing to drive a car for a few hours a day, right? And make money, all using a simple app. Now, so the innovation, their idea was not just that we'll make it easy to get taxes, because that is stating the problem. Their idea was in saying like we will aggregate student cars, right? And let them come in for any amount of time that they want to come in, few hours to several hours a day. And we will aggregate all this kind of cars that is available and then make a large taxi service available to a bunch of consumers. Get cars from people like students and make it available for those on the other side. Now, so that was the idea. So when you think of an idea, even when you state it in a simple sentence or like in a short 30-second or a 60-second 30-second or 60-second statement, remember you should talk about the problem and you should talk about how are you going to solve the problem at a very high level. But that is the summary of the problem. So when you think of a startup, you need to have an idea first. And the idea is a problem and a creative way of solving that problem. But that's where the startup's journey starts. So going a little bit further, now what is the problem? You identify what the problem is. Like if you take the example of Uber or even just take Amazon when it started. Amazon did not start saying that we will be a kind of a massive everything for everybody e-commerce site. That's why they are today. 23, 24 years back when they started as a used book stores for university students. They had only used book. The problem they were going after was like, there was a used book market, just like in India and US also it is there, right? Books, especially college books and textbooks and reference books and such. Once you finish your kind of course or the year, you may not need it. So there's a fairly vibrant market, but it is not very organized. So the problem they went after is, can we organize this used book market in university campuses? And given that internet was proliferating and everybody was beginning to get access to internet, this was 96, 97, 98, around that time. So everybody was beginning to get access to internet. So they said, why not we use internet and make it easier for people wanting to sell used books to find buyers and people that want to buy used books to find sellers, right? And aggregate and create that scale. So that was their whole. So the problem was like, can we use internet and a simple web-based solution to connect the sellers to the buyers and the buyers to the sellers, right? Now, so that was the problem. Now you can't say like I will build a solution for any book. Eventually they became that also, right? When they start off with a used book solution for university campuses, and very soon in a few years they became a huge online bookstore. You could get any book online, and from there they went on to further innovate, right? Do online only books, get the Kindle, book reader, many other things. They kind of went, even in books, they went much beyond where they started. But when they started, they were a solution for used books on university campuses. Now the problem was like, people that want to find books cannot find sellers, and people that want to sell books cannot find buyers. But generally they go put in notice boards and bulletin boards, and that is too, I mean, it's not very restrictive. I mean, you have to pass through the bulletin board at the same time to find it. So, and it worked very well for them. Now, so it's important to understand what the problem is and for whom. Any solution, if you're building a solution, if somebody is building a solution for, like, say, customer support, for instance, like today, if somebody is building a solution for customer support, we need to understand what is the problem. Companies need customers. I mean, companies have customers. Companies, if they have products and such, companies will have a customer support group. Like if you take a large telecom company like Airtel or Vodafone or anybody, they have customer support group. Now, they will get calls. They have to service the customers. Now, the problem exists, the need exists. What exactly is the need? Is the need for customer support solutions? They exist. Tons of them exist. Which means when you think of the problem, you should not just think of the problem in terms of, like, if you take the case of Uber, if imagine somebody is like Uber is coming into India now, starting in India. There's Uber in India, there's Ola in India. If another person, another company is coming and trying, they can't say like it's hard to find taxis. Yes, it is hard to find taxis even today. But they can't say it's hard to find taxis, so I will create a company like Uber. Uber already exists in India. And not just Uber, there's Ola, which is equally big and equally successful. Which means, like, when you think of a problem, you should think of a problem both in terms of the need and the gap. Right? The current solution providers don't work for a certain segment. We had a startup called Shuttle. After Uber and Ola became fairly popular, they came and they said, yes, Uber and Ola are solving the problem of anybody wanting a taxi, like to go to the airport or to go somewhere. But commuters, it's not an option. They're too expensive, daily commuters. Every day if I had to go and come in Uber, it's very expensive. So they said, like, can we build a solution like Uber for commuters? Because commuters had a problem. The daily office goers, they had a problem, and Uber was not a solution for them because it's expensive. Every day, if you have to spend like 200 rupees in the morning and 200 in the evening, that was too expensive for them. So this company came and said, right, they were called Commute. The company also was called Commute, and there's another similar company called Shuttle. In fact, Shuttle acquired Commute a few years back. When Commute started, they said, we will create an Uber-like service, which is like app-based, but for daily commuters, and provide like buses only in the morning and evening to go to office and come back from office. And they became quite successful. Now, had they said we will do what Uber is doing, there's no reason to do what Uber is doing. So Uber is already there, right? But they said we will do something in a segment where Uber is not able to address effectively today. The Uber's model doesn't support commuters. Now, since it was commuters, they could use 10-seater vans. They didn't go with small cars. They went with 10-seater vans. So when 10 people are traveling together, and they could do that because all commuters. And in Hyderabad, like the IT cluster is one big area with like 500, 600,000 people come daily from different parts of the city to one area. So they could easily organize this because people are going, the destination is the same. So you could find large source clusters and do commuter service from that source cluster to the destination cluster, right, from different parts of the city, and get the scale they need to bring the price down. So when Uber would cost 400 rupees a day, they could do it at 100 rupees a day and still make profits. Now, so when you think of the problem, it can't be just a blanket need saying like anybody that needs a car has a problem today. That's a very vague statement of the problem. You should talk about specific segments where they have a problem in spite of existing solutions. There will be gaps, right? So you have to understand that problem in the context of existing solutions. So like this company Commute went and tried to solve the problem for commuters only, not for anybody wanting a car. Commuters wanting to go to the office and come back from office, and a car for that is all they were trying to solve. So they narrowed down, and there was a clear problem. The existing solutions didn't work for them. If they're driving a car, it's too painful. They're away, like they're staying like an hour or so away from work. Driving back and forth is painful, tiring, and exhausting, right? Carpool is an option, but carpool had issues, right? It's a small pool, and you have to make sure like your pool is a steady pool. It doesn't work. If somebody has work extra one day, somebody takes off leave. It's very, very kind of fragile system. Uber and Ola will work, but they're expensive. So they had a good problem statement when they went and said, okay, we will do a van-based Ola-like service for commuters, Uber-like service for commuters. So it's very important to understand the problem in the context of the current solutions. It's also important to understand how bad the problem is, right? Now, if the problem is very, like, see, if the greenfield problems, like they say, like when you talk about problem, there's a definition of problem, like is it oxygen, aspirin, or jewelry? Oxygen means that absolutely life critical. Without that, you can't even kind of live. You can't exist. Now, if somebody can come with a simple tablet that can cure COVID in 3 days, that product will get the market immediately. Will capture the global markets. Right? That is oxygen, where it is like they're completely greenfield virgin markets, and such solutions can come only from research. Right? It's not for any innovator. This needs a lot of intellectual background. This can come only from research. The next level is aspirin. That somebody has a pain. Because of that, there should be a pain. If you take the commuters, imagine somebody living 15 minutes from home. For them, not much of a pain. If they take Uber, it's not very expensive. If they drive their own car, it's only 15 minutes, they can drive their own car. If they have a carpool and the carpool doesn't work, it's okay. If today carpool didn't work, I will just drive. It's only 15 minutes. There's parking in the office. So it's not critical for them. Now imagine the same thing, somebody living on the other side of town, right? There is 1.5 hours on a good traffic day and 2.5 hours on a bad traffic day. Now, if that is the kind of commute, for them, the pain is much higher. So you should target those that have the pain, not some marginal need. The one that's living 15 minutes from the office only has a marginal need, right? But the one that's living 1.5 hours from the office, the need is critical, because if the carpool doesn't work and they have to drive, suddenly they have to drive for 1.5 hours. If they have to take an Uber, it's very expensive. So there has to be a pain. If there's a pain and current solutions are not able to address that pain, is where you have the opportunity. So when you think of an idea, think of a problem, right? Be sure that there's a clear pain that you're addressing. Now, like I said, when you look at the market, it's not that it will be completely unmet. Even if you just take the case of the commuters, they have solutions. They can take a bus, they can take a train, right? They can drive their own car, they can carpool, they can do Uber or Ola. There are multiple solutions. So it's not that they cannot get to the office today. But for some of them, yes, while they can get to the office, there is pain. In one case, it takes a lot of time. In the other case, like yes, train gets you to some close by point, but last mile connectivity is poor. From my house to the station is poor. From station to the office is poor. So I have to shell out for autos. Sometimes I won't get autos. And like, so it's kind of, there's a pain there if I take the public transport. Buses gets me closer, but buses are very, very crowded and very poor quality buses, especially in Hyderabad. Now, Uber Ola, yes, it's a good solution. Some days I may not get it, but most days it works, but it's very expensive. So every solution has a but. Yes, it works, but it takes time, but it is expensive, but I don't get autos sometimes. Now, that is where you should understand what those buts are. That's the unmet need. Today's solutions, there is a gap. Today's solution, there is a need that is not met. Now, that gap for who is the one that has the gap? What is the gap and what is the pain because of the gap? If you have those three identified, then you have a good opportunity, right? So it's important to understand who has that need and where it is and why is it unmet, and what is the pain because of it being unmet. What is the pain? Now, of course, comes once I've identified the problem, I've understood who has the problem, I understood why they have the problem, and I also understood how bad the problem is. There is a pain. And I've also understood that the problem is for those where they can't find, right? They can't find, the current solutions are inadequate. Now, once you have the problem clearly identified, now comes how are you solving it, right? Like I said, just it's stating the problem. Problem doesn't become startup's idea. Problem is only an opportunity for the startup. How the startup addresses the problem is the startup idea. There is this problem, and this is how I'm going to address the problem. That combination is startup's idea. So how are you going to address the problem is very, very important, right? You're in a research institution. Now, if you say like, I'm trying to address a, say, conversational bot problem. Like today, all the chat bots are English based. The regional languages bots are beginning to come up, but not very, very good yet. Now, supposing you were to say like, I want to build like a Hindi or Telugu or like Urdu or whatever, Indian language bot for customer support. Now, you should have the technology that is ready. Right? You should say that, okay, in my lab, we have this thing that we've done, which works very well for Hindi. Now, like I can converse in Hindi on chat, and then I can understand what is being said, and then actually execute whatever required in the backend system and come back. So I have the language technology solution in the lab to understand Hindi, conversational Hindi in a chat interface, right? Now, or in other cases, like I have just a different way of doing it. It's in some cases, like in this case, it's coming from research. In other cases, it's just that like nobody has thought of it, right? When Shuttle came and did the solution for commute, right? Now for commuters, it's not that it's rocket science what they were doing. It was just that nobody thought of it yet, and nobody has executed that yet. So they were first one to come, they were the first one to understand, they were the first one to execute, and all the learning that they had in the first year built the barriers. Somebody else cannot do that in 2-3 months. They need the same level of understanding and experience to be able to do it right. It's not like, so it's not that the idea was new in their case. Just that nobody had done it. And they were the first one to do it. So, but you should have a solution which is unique and workable to address the problem that you identified. So that comes next. Now, this is just a different way of looking at something. How are you unique? If you're doing same thing as somebody else is doing, then you don't have an opportunity, right? Even assuming you can execute very, very well. Remember, if you're displacing an incumbent, there's an existing solution. When the commuter solution came, Uber, Ola existed, Carpool existed. If you're going to displace an existing solution, you have to be much better than them. You have to be solving a very significant pain to displace an incumbent. If you're only marginally better, then it's not good enough. Because incumbents have the comfort. I know them for many, many months or many, many years. I know it works. I know what is good, what is not good. So I'm okay with it. I know everything about it. This new entity, I'm just looking at it only based on the claims that they're making. So I don't know. So I will not take a risk unless the value is very, very high. Then I'm willing to take a risk. Now, so you need to understand what is unique about your solution compared to your competition for your target segment. Right? We're not talking about like to anybody. To your target segment, why are you unique? How does your solution stand out? What is different between your solution and other solutions? What is the innovation? Right? And again, remember when you look at all of these, you should look at it from my standpoint, from your standpoint. You should not say like, look, I'm the only one that is built using the latest Golang framework. I'm the only one that's got a very slick design. And like, it's not about you saying what is different. It's about you thinking from customer standpoint on what will customers see as different in what you're doing. This whole process about what is unique should be seen from the customer's view. What will customer find unique? What will customer find different? You should think of it from the customer standpoint, not from your standpoint. And it has to be competitive, right? If supposing like, even if it is the commuter solution, I built a commuter solution and I've got it working, but imagine like Uber costs 400 rupees and my solution costs only 350 rupees. Now, I'm a new service, I'm offering it, and I'm only marginally cheaper than Uber, Ola. So very hard to get people to look. So it should be competitive, right? Competitive in the sense like it often be for one segment. First thing in this case, commuters, right? We cannot be competitive for anybody else. Only for commuters we can be competitive. So we're targeting commuters. So you should know who your customers are. For that customer segment, how are you addressing it? That is much, much better than the others. Either in terms of the capabilities or the quality or completeness or price. Right? I'm as good as everybody else, but I'm at 1/3 the price. Okay, there you're very, very competitive. I'm the same price, but I offer a service others don't offer. Commuters cannot use Uber and Ola because like in the morning rush hour, they don't get the Uber and Ola. So here I'm offering a service like Uber and Ola, but it's assured booking. 8:30 every morning, you will get a car because you have reserved it. Right? Which Uber Ola cannot do. They don't have the ability to reserve. Now a commuter, because I'm targeting commuters, my whole model is different. Nobody signs up for one day. Uber is not even for one day. Uber is for one ride. In my case, somebody signs up for a whole month. So I can plan better. Now, so you should be competitive either in terms of capabilities, in like effectiveness, or in price. But you have to be compared again only for your target segment. This should not be looking at this from the overall like how am I better than Uber is not the question here. How am I better than Uber for commuters is the question here. Because it should be around your target segment that you're going after. For that segment, you have to be extremely competitive. Right? And that is, and then when looking at competition, one thing everybody misses out is like, you only look at the kind of tools that you're building. If supposing I'm saying like I've built a map-based tool for commuters, and if you say like nobody else has map-based tool for commuters, that's not competitive. Right? You should look at how are your target customers managing today? Without a map-based app, by using train and auto, if their need is met, then your offering is not going to be effective. You have to compare what are the, with every other way the customer addresses their need. The need here is to get to office. Every other way that the customer has, you have to compare with. You can't say like I only compare with map-based apps. You have to compare with every alternative the customer has. Taking a train is an alternative. Taking a bus is an alternative. Taking an auto is an alternative. Coming by own car is an alternative. Every alternative you have to compare and you should have a better proposition. So that's when you're competitive. Now, who's my customer? If you go back again, these are all different ways of looking at the same problem, right? You can't say like anybody wanting a ride is my customer. Every commuter is my customer, right? You have to be sure you segment the customers right and you target those which have very high value and high probability for you to target to them. Both are important, not just they have a need. They have a need, you have a solution, and you have a very good chance you can capture them. So every commuter in the city is, every citizen is too broad anyway. Every office goer also is too broad. If you have to say like, look, I am going to target industry clusters. Could be IT industry, could be any industry. Because in one cluster, there are like tens of thousands or even few lakh employees that are employed in one kind of geographical area. So I will target clusters and I will target far ends of the clusters. I won't go to nearby areas. Like within 15 minutes, 30 minutes, my value is not very high. Beyond 1 hour commute is where my value is high. So I'll offer my service from residential clusters that are far off from the work clusters. Could be any industry. Now, you should understand like, and then even here, I won't target everybody. Like somebody like who's not earning much may not even be able to pay 100 rupees a day for me. Right? They may want to come in their own two-wheeler or maybe even come in public transport. So you say, look, I'm going to look at mid-level workers. Like if you go to slightly more higher end of the whole workforce, they may have their own drivers and such. They will do work on the way, they do their conference calls, whatever. They may not have a problem. Lower earning part of the workforce, they probably can't afford your service. So if we say I'm going to target mid-level IT industry to begin with, then I will target aerospace industry, which is near the airport, and I will target these. So pharmaceutical industry, which is here. So you're looking at industry clusters. You need to have a statement of who your customer is, so that like you know that for that segment the problem is very, very high. You have a way of addressing the segment, reaching out to the segment, and then the value can be delivered. Right? So you need to be clear who your customers are, who has this problem, and how do you get to them. So it's very important as you look through your idea. Now, how do we get? It's not enough to say like these are my customers. There should be a way to get to them. Right? You should have a way to get to them. Like if I'm going after the office commuters, maybe the way to get to them is like I will go after very, very large apartment complexes on the other end of the city. And then do a campaign in one complex first, saying like anybody going to the IT industry, high-tech city in Hyderabad, we have this commuter service. We'll target with only one residential community, large one, and then expand other residential communities. After some traction, you'll say like I will go to large companies or large IT parks and then work with them and say, look, I can get you from these different neighborhoods. You should have a strategy, you should know where the segments are and what is the access through IT park management, through a large company HR, right? Through residential communities, through large apartment complexes. You should have a way. Those are the channels. How do you get to them? You can't say I will take a Facebook ad and find them. That is too wishful thinking. you should be able to know these target groups and you should have a way of getting to the groups. So how do you get to the customers is very important, even in the early stages. I'm working on an idea, yes, this becomes more critical in later stages as you start getting into the market, but you should have some idea in the beginning also that, okay, there is a way to get to my customers. And then the final question, right? Is it viable? After everything I can do, I can sell at a lower cost, I can deliver value to my customers, I can do everything, but at the end of it, if I can't, especially this works more for physical products, not software products, right? There's a cost of each product. Imagine if I'm making a medical device, if I'm doing a wearable, for instance, right? A health wearable, health tracker wearable. Now if that device costs, that if that wearable device costs, if that device costs, like say, I can sell for 1,000 rupees, but cost me 1,200 rupees to make it. It's not viable. I'm losing money on every piece that I sell. So that's not a viable business model. So I should be able to kind of, it should be viable, meaning what I can sell it at. It costs me 1,500. So I can't say like it's cost me 1,500, so I will sell it at 2,000. The market may not buy it at 2,000. Because the market has alternatives that are already at say 300, 500. Because your quality is very good, you're solving a pain, they may go up to 1,000, but they won't go to 2,000. So you have to understand the market's ability to pay vis-a-vis existing alternatives and the value you bring. But there'll be a limit. If market cannot pay beyond a certain limit, and if you can't sell below that, it's not viable for you. Right? I mean, yeah, you only get the market. So viability is an important part of, right? So net, just to conclude, maybe I can take a few questions. Like great products have desirability, right? Desirability comes like sum of all parts, right? It should be like there should be a need, there should be a gap, there should be a set of users from the gap is very high, they have a pain, right? And you're addressing the pain, so they value what you're doing for them, right? And then not just value what you're doing for them, desirability is a step above that. They should value what you're doing for them. They should find it useful and helpful. Beyond that, you should just bowl them over. There should be a wow factor. The product should be so good. That's what Apple did with its iPod and later iPhone. There were many products in the market. They came and they did it better and did it way better, right? So that there's an emotional thing. Like I love when I use the product. I love it so much. I talk to every of my friends saying, look, check out this product, this iPhone, amazing phone. Like check it out. Like I mean, the virality it created, that happens from the desirability. Right? You should do the job very well for its target segment and go beyond doing it very well. Right? You should do it so well that there's a very, very high desirability. There's a wow factor that gets created. Now, that is not enough. I thought of a product which can create the wow factor, but it should be feasible technically. Today's state of technology should allow it. If not, then it just becomes a dream. It just remains a dream. Right? It should be feasible. I should be able to build it. And then the third part, I should be able to build a desirable product in a way that the business is viable. I can still make money out of it. If not, then the startup is no life at all. Right? Never even get off the ground. You may build a great product, but if it cannot sell, then there's no business. So you should be able to build a very highly desirable product that is technically feasible and business-wise viable. That's what makes a great product. I can take a few questions.
Yes. Thanks, Ramesh. So if participants have any questions, please go ahead. While participants are coming in, let me ask one question from my side, Ramesh. So this $1 billion valuation for unicorns, which is typically done for US. So looking at the purchasing power differential in India, is it fair that we do that kind of valuation for Indian unicorns as well?
We could go a little lower. I mean, that's remained a measure right now, like $1 billion, because like the moment it goes past the first few rounds of valuation, it's a very global investment ecosystem. The investors come from different countries. I think they're sort of stuck to it for that reason.
Yeah, if a startup is only focused on, at say, Indian market, maybe they would not scale up from a dollar perspective. That's what I was thinking.
It's like, I mean, maybe not. I mean, that's one measure. Thankfully, not the only measure. That is one measure of a successful startup. There are other measures as well. You're right. I mean, like unicorns only one measure. There are many startups that never raise money and still do extremely well. they don't even come in the radars of unicorns and such because there's no valuation. They're self-funded.
Another question which I had
one measure.
Yeah, another question which I had is if there are like one aspect is innovativeness, where you try to come up with a particular pain point or particular thing which probably nobody has thought of. There is another way in some startups, and many probably fall in that category, is that something which exists outside India and they try to bring it in some other form in India. How will you rate that kind of innovation, or will it even be called?
I mean, see, that's if they can, it also depends on how well they execute. But that's not a bad option so long as they understand that there is a problem, there is a need for it. Because some other country had the need wouldn't mean that there's a need for it in India. But if there's a need for it,
yeah,
and they can execute.
Flipkart was actually probably inspired by Amazon, and then they started here.
No, so Flipkart is the same, Ola is the same. So which is okay. I mean, like, yes, they are not majorly innovative here, but they're executing very well.
Yeah.
If they've managed to grow the business, they're executing very well.
Yeah. And there might be a first mover advantage with these kind of people.
Yes. For their market proposition is that, look, it doesn't exist in India. There's a need in India, but Amazon is not in India.
Right.
And so I will become the Amazon of India. And they had the guts to kind of take up the problem, and then they execute very well. That's how they've scaled.
Any other questions, please, you can ask. Hello, guys. No other questions? After such an amazing talk, I felt like at least people would come up with some questions. Seems like.
I can even take, if anybody has an idea, we can even talk about an idea.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, I want to ask, like, can we verify the viability before product development? Like, because only after the product is made, we would get to know what is the cost that that is required in the product, and we have also to do the market research required for testing the viability. So, is it possible, like, before product development, we can test the viability?
No, absolutely. See, again, it's an iterative process. Almost all of these that we discussed today, it's not just an early stage startup problem. That's a problem. It's a continuous problem. If I'm adding some major functionality into my existing product, I need to ask all these questions. Why am I adding it? Who has the need? Will it get me additional revenue? Will it help keep my present customers? Or without it, will I lose my customers? You need to have all those answers, even for a stable, mature product in the market. You're going to invest more efforts in the product. And so it's a continuous process. The first iteration of it will be with nothing on hand. You just have an idea. But even then, you'll have some idea like what it may take to build something like it, right? If you have an idea that this is the need, this is the kind of solution I want to build, you'll say, like, to build something like this, like maybe I will need 3 people and roughly about a year's time to build it. So you have a cost, right? And if it's a hardware product, you also know, like, roughly this looks like it might cost 1,500 rupees per unit. It may be less, maybe more. You'll know more when you come later, but you'll have an approximate idea in the beginning. So you know that is it like a finger in the air measure. You know, is it viable or not? Is 1,500 okay? If every other product is selling at 100, 1,500 is not okay. If other products are at about 1,500, then I'm in the ballpark. But I need to have other value because I'm not selling just on cost.
There is one question here on the chat box. Can you elaborate on how to approach customers? Maybe give some examples.
So, I mean, it all goes back to understanding who your customers are. Who are you building for? Right? If that thinking is sharp, then there's no shortcuts. There's no magic formulas here, right? It's just mostly common sense intuition, which is like not a great deal of help. But if I know for whom the value is the highest, now that is the segment I will go and say, look, you surely have this pain today. And like and you go to that segment and you go to the ones, see, you start off with, like they say, like boring pin strategy, when you do market entry. The first one, you hit the first one pin you hit. And because you hit that pin, other pins, you capture the remaining segment. The first pin should be a very, very high value one. You go to that first. Right? Eventually, you may have 10 other segments. But any of the other segments may not be as compelling as the first one that you go after. That should be a segment for whom the pain is the highest. Right? There is one consideration when you look at who the initial customers are. Amongst all your possible customers, who has the most compelling need for your product? Right? That is one consideration. The other consideration is like amongst those top few that have the most compelling need, where do you have access? Right? I have a segment, my most compelling segment, but that segment I don't know anybody. But in the second or third segment, I have some access through my university, through my friends, through my contacts, through my mentors. Right? I may start there first. But you should understand all the segments that you're going after and where the value proposition is highest. And then balance that with where you have access. And that's where you will start. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Any
Any
other
other
questions? Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know your opinion because during this COVID, I don't think it's really possible to talk to customers, right, face to face. So, do you think, putting our idea on the landing page and taking through the customer experience, and then using that landing page to and market it, and then get some users to sign up? You think that's a good idea to validate a startup right now?
No, that's always a highly recommended idea, especially if it's a consumer product. Right? If it's a consumer product, let them experience your product, right? And but then that's a double-edged sword. While they may experience your product and express interest, but the flip side is like if they express interest and you don't deliver soon, then you may lose them forever.
Yeah.
So it depends on the kind of product. But in any case, any product, it makes sense as you do the initial validation. You have people you can talk to, even if it's an enterprise product. It may not be the decision maker in a company, but maybe there's some senior of yours or a friend of yours or a mentor of yours who has a connection to whom you can go and talk. So when I go talk to somebody to get feedback, if I just express the idea, there's one level. I can communicate to some extent. If I can put a few slides or a document together, I can communicate to a slightly next level. But if I can give a complete mock UI of the product, I can communicate much better. Right? Somebody can go through the mock UI and then understand how your product is and tell them, look, you know what, this will work for me. If you can deliver what you're showing here, my industry will like it.
Yeah.
So it could be anywhere, but showing them what your product may feel like, make them experience the possible value is a good kind of trigger for validation.
So what I've done is on the landing page, I've just created some UI mockups, and then I just take them through what they could do, on a step-by-step process.
No, but
So
it depends. It depends on what. It depends on who you're reaching out to and why.
Yep.
Right? If you say like I have mockups, so what do you expect from those mockups? When somebody comes to your site and goes through the mockups, what do you expect? So there should be clear call to action.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm asking for a survey. Maybe I'm asking for feedback. Maybe I'm asking for pre-orders.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at any of the product crowdfunding, right? Like any of the product crowdfunding, there, I'm only presenting a promise. It's pre-orders.
Yeah.
I'm showing the video. I've shown everything my product can do, and I'm confident. Like once I get the order in 3 months, I can deliver.
Yeah.
But I may not have a product yet, or I may have a product, but I may not have secured all the manufacturing yet. But I'm confident I can do it in 3 months. So I'm showing them what the product is, while I still don't have the product manufactured. I only have a prototype.
Oh yeah.
But then the purpose is clear. I'm showing what my product can do and asking for pre-orders. Sometimes I'm showing and asking for expression of interest. Sometimes I'm showing and asking just for feedback.
Yeah.
So you should know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then accordingly do it so that your campaigns, because web page itself will not draw any traffic. You take campaign, you send mails or social media messages or wherever to be able to get people to come. So you can target the right people that can get you the outcome you want from whatever you're doing on the site.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thanks. That helps a lot.
So let's
Next
take.
question. Can you please give your views on fidget spinner? It was a very simple product, but still got the market. Why? It just got the fancy, right? In this case, you're not solving any particular problem, right? If I didn't touch upon it in my types of product, there was jewelry at the top, which is aspirational. It doesn't serve any purpose, but there's an emotional, there's an aspirational value to it, some happiness value. The jewels is like partly aspirational because it is got monetary value and partly it's happiness. Fidget spinner is pure happiness. There's no monetary value on it, but you feel good doing it. So somebody said like, this is something like, because you see, if you term fidget spinner capable, we generally are very fidgety. I may keep something in my hand, I may keep fumbling with it, like I may throw it. So somebody saw that like they tend to do such things. The whole squeeze balls came up that way. Right? That's again like a variation of fidget spinner. They were very, very popular 15, 20 years back, even today. But when they first came, they were super popular. And there was similar thing, right? I just keep squeezing a ball because like many people are like have this little bit of restless energy. Somebody said like this is the way to dissipate the restless energy through a fidget spinner. So it became popular because it just connected, right, with the customers, and customers felt good using it.
There are some other questions here. Ramesh, you can look in the chat box maybe and quickly.
Yeah, toy market, I don't have much of an experience to comment on the toy market.
There is one more before that. How do you monetize information-based startups? Any examples?
So information-based startups, information-based startups, like say there are a lot of advisory sites. I mean, recently we are working with one startup, like any category, product category. If they will go, they have a technology, crawler technology, they're going to go find different sources on the internet and find, like, for instance, like if you're saying like you're building something on, say, computational cinematography, you want to use algorithmic AI for editing movies, or an AI for cinematography. Now they have a technology where like you map that space, you give all the keywords and give some information on the space. They have crawlers that will go crawl all the social media, Twitter and such, look at all the references, look at the references with sentiment, positive and negative, and come out with a report that gives me a lay of the land on like what are the various kinds of products in that space, who are the various players, startups, large companies, what kind of products are common, what kind of products have many market news. It completely categorizes that user, completely done algorithmically. It's just modeled upfront. It's an information-based startup. Now you have to know who you're building it for. This is like a report. Normally I would engage a PwC or an E&Y or such and tell them like, can you go do the market study and come back with a report for this product? I'm trying to build a AI-based cinematography product that can kind of edit and do all kind of other post-shooting processes. Now they will go take 1 or 2 months study and then prepare a nice report. Now I'm getting a report instantaneously. After I modeled it, I can get an update. Updates are instantaneous. First time it takes few weeks. Subsequently, anytime I can get a monthly report which gives an update on that same segment, updated report automatically. So you should find who has the need for that information and why is it hard to find. And then if you can provide that information, then you have an opportunity.
Yes, Ramesh, I think we are running out of time. You also have some other engagement. Maybe we'll finish with our other startup, that mentorship. So apart from Logier, everybody else can, thank you for joining, and maybe you can leave.